Hello friends, welcome back. This video is going to be very important for those who really want to know the life cycle of JSF. Okay, so without wasting time, let's go and work on this. Let's see how JSF works. So this is the life cycle. You can see life cycle stages of or life cycle phases of JSF request. So first thing is like we need to have a hit. So whenever there is a click, so you see here, the life cycle of JSF application begins when the client makes an HTTP request for a page and ends when the server responds with the page. Okay. So basically, the life cycle begins when a user clicks on a link or on a button on the screen. Okay. And then the very first phase is restore view. Next is apply request values. After that, we have process validations. Then we have update model values. So guys, don't worry, I will explain what happens during this phase in this video. So just stay tuned. Next is invoke applications, and the final stage is or final phase of JSF lifecycle is render response. Easy, right? So basically, once a request gets processed, it goes through different phases. Now let's go and see what happens during each phase. So the very first phase is restore view. Restore view, if you see here, so JSF begins the restore view phase as soon as a link or a button is clicked and JSF receives a request. Okay, so what happens during this phase? So basically JSF framework, it builds component tree. When I say component tree, for example, here is our screen, sign in. So we have components. So input text box, email address, there is another input text box to accept the password. We have one checkbox and then there is a button. So these are known as components. So what JSF does is it builds the component tree. So it prepares like this page we are going to display or going to render these components on the screen. So this is the very first phase. It prepares the component tree. And why do we call it restore view? What happens is like if we have already visited the particular screen, then JSF and the component tree is available in phases context. So here this one, if it is there, then it will restore the component tree. So don't worry about the restoration. We'll talk about this one in the last phase of this request processing. So what you understand during this phase is the basic meaning is here JSF prepare or build the component tree. Components, so these are the components. Okay, let's move to the second phase. Second phase is apply request values. So you need to understand this one. Let me just quickly go back. If I talk about this phase, so there are no values in these input text. Okay. Now, as part of apply request values means when the screen is ready and user start key in some values into the input text box. For example, here I have entered email address and password. Right. So basically, what JSF does is it fetches new values and stored in component. So whatever new values entered by the user in the component in the input text box, right? So this JSF stores those values in these components. So basically the component 1 will have OK computing, this new value. Component 2 will have the password. This checkbox is still no action taken on this one, so it will be as it is, no values. So this is, so apply request values, which means get the values from the screen and bind those values to the components. So this is what it is. And apart from this, what JSF does during this phases, it also works on converters. So basically JSF provides some inbuilt converters. You can also create custom ones. So converters are, you can say, inbuilt methods that does processing on the loading of the screen, on page load. And in case if there is a failure, so basically if you see this one, f:convert number, it's a one converter, a method. What it does is basically converts a string into a number of desired format. For example, you are entering some value in a string format, numerical value, then it will convert those numbers into a decimal format. In case if the numbers, if your numerical value, your string has some sort of say alphanumeric value or alphabets in between or symbols, then it will come up with a error message. Similarly here, there is another converter, we have convert date time. So what it does, so whatever value you have in your string, it will convert that particular date time, that value into this format, dd, mm, yy. In case the value is like something, if you have put some sort of symbols or there are some symbols or alphanumeric values, right, or some alphabets in the string, then it will come up with an error message saying whatever value you have entered is incorrect, not able to convert, some sort of error message. So we'll talk about converters later in the video, not in this one, in the coming videos. Okay, so apply request values, there are two tasks. One is to apply new values to the components. Second, execute the converters. Okay, if so there are no converters, it is up to the user. If you have used converters in your, if you have bind some converters with your input text box, then only these converters will execute. So it is up to you, up to the developer. Okay, so next phase is process validation. So what happens during this validation is JSF process all the validators registered on the component tree. So similarly, similar to the converters, there are some inbuilt validators that JSF provides. You can also create your own custom validators. So when I say validators, for example, we have something called validate length. So it checks the length. If your input value is more than that particular length, it will come up with a, so for example, I have used a validator here with the password. If password is less than 3, minimum 3 characters required, if it is less than 3, it will come up with the error message, or if it is more than 8 or more than 12, it will come up with the error message. So you can define the length as well, max or minimum, and then this converter will work for that. Similarly, we have another validator. So similarly, we have another validator called validate long range. We have validate double, and then we have validate regular extension. So there are different validators available. We'll talk about each one in the coming videos. So the understanding of this phase is what happens during this phase. JSF process all the validators registered on the component tree. Okay, let's see. Next phase is update model values. Now this is the very important phase. What happens during this phase is, like, as of now we can see we have these values in the component tree, in the components. When I say components, input text boxes, right? Now during phase 4, what happens, these values are actually updated into your bean values, in the beans. So what JSF does, JSF will update the bean properties corresponding to the input components value attribute. So for example, to store the email address, I have a bean value called like property or attribute email. For password, there is a password. So during this phase 4, JSF actually goes and updates the bean values. It makes use of certain methods. Okay, it's pretty simple. Next phase is invoke application. So once JSF done all the 4 phases, what it does is basically it works on application level events. So application level events, so what is the actual functionality? What do you want JSF to do? Either you can submit a form, or you can navigate user to the another page, right? Or you can display some more data on the same screen, right? And to take care of this one, JSF makes use of faces configuration.xml file. JSF provides 2 sort of ways to define the bean. Either you can use annotation to declare a bean, or you can make use of managed bean XML tags, and you can put those values into the faces config.xml file. So we'll talk about how JSF works, how can we declare a bean in the coming videos, in the demo portion. And also we are supposed to declare some sort of navigation rules, like what happens. So as part of this video, for this process, I have used a login page. Once I am done with the entire thing, the user will navigate to the catalog screen, my shopping page. Okay, so during this phase, JSF takes, it prepares for the next section, what needs to be done with this request. Next is render response. So this is the final stage. At this stage, what the JSF does is basically renders the response. So whatever response is built, right, either navigate the user to the next screen, fetch some data and display on the same screen, so whatever. So this is the final stage where JSF displays the response to the user. So this is the end of the life cycle here. End of the JSF request processing life cycle. Okay. So thank you friends, we are done here. So let me, if you think there is a problem and if you want me to recap, okay, let me just go back to the very first life cycle. Here, let's say about this one now. Again, restore view, what we have learned here is JSF build or prepares the component tree. Okay. Next step is apply request values. So whatever input is entered by the user, that inputs will be stored into the component tree, in the components basically. Okay, then we have process validation. So whatever validators are registered with the components, like those validators will be executed, and converters as well. Update model values. So the user inputs will be actually updated into the bean properties or bean attributes. Here in your application, here JSF takes your application, what your application will be doing, your business logic basically. And here is final response. Final response can be the result outcome on the same screen, or you can navigate the user to the next screen. It depends on your business requirement. Okay. Now here is one more important thing which I want to highlight. If you see, after each phase we have something called process events. Okay. So what this process event does, like after executing each phase, there are events which are getting executed behind the scene, and in case of any failures it returns those values to the screen. Like for example, here we have used converters. In case there is a failure, for example you have used convert number but your string is holding alphanumeric values, then JSF will render an error message. It come up with an error message. In case of validate, for example you are validating some sort of length or something else, or executing what do you call that, regular expression, but there is a problem with the data, so JSF will return an error message. So this process events will be executed after each phase, and it will come up with the validation, conversion errors or event errors in case if it is there, and it will display the error message to the user on the same screen. Don't worry guys, we'll see each and everything working in the coming videos during the demo session. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.